I knew you were going to talk more about migrating, and so
Well, that's good. You even heard that, well, a version of that already. So that's good that
yeah,
you
and
still found it helpful.
at rock stars,
Yeah,
but this was you parts of it were a little more in depth. But
yeah, yeah. Definitely want to make sure that I definitely want to give. Yeah, I was looking to give some more information because I knew there'd be a chunk of people that had already seen it. So, oh, we have a guest. We have a, guest co-host today.
yeah,
Yeah,
Special guest co-host.
little Maggie's here.
haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, he picked her up from school, mate. Say hello.
Hey, remember me?
Remember him?
You're supposed to say yes, even if you don't. It's polite.
I don't remember Terry either.
Yeah.
Well, Ted doesn't because of the pain drugs he was on a couple months ago. So
Hey, I'm off those now.
Don't say anything. Mm.
The
there's
truth
a new
is,
pain drug out. Did you
Yeah.
see? FDA approved. It doesn't have addiction problems and stuff. Also doesn't help with pain as much, apparently, but
Daddy.
Right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of SEO Fight Club. Be sure to ask questions early because we often run out of time. So if it's important, ask early. Otherwise, take your chances. I'm going to pop out the questions here. We have a couple presentations from Charles and Lee for today. But I wanted to briefly mention a couple things. One of which is we're starting an SEO Fight Club forum, and it's free, it's open to the public, it's moderated. So if you have questions and topics you want to talk about outside of the show, head over to seofightclub.org, sign up, and help us build this community. We could really use your help on seeding the forum and making engagement. So check it out. Give us a hand. We'd love to have you over there. All right. Additionally, Google's made a really big fundamental change, and I don't think most of the SEO world realizes. Have you ever heard of keyword variations? There's a
I might have
number
chatted
of
about it last
SEO
time.
there's a number of SEO tools that have been using them. They are the words that Google makes bold in search. Well, Google has decided that they were playing too nice with those, and they have changed them in a way that makes them utterly useless. And so, because of that, for all practical purposes, that is an SEO Armageddon because Google's tip on what words make you relevant just kind of went away. It's still there, but it is so convoluted now because they're bolding entire like sentences. Um, that yeah, it has no practical value. So I know in my software, I have been experimenting with alternatives since, geez, probably the second year of my software's existence. I'm like, let's keep these ideas in the background just in case Google takes them away one day. So I'm up and running, but I'm tuning mine. So mine looks pretty good. Um, maybe I should show a couple examples. Let me move the slide over here. All right, and let me delete that slide. Don't need it. Make it
All right, so
big.
Ted, let me take Google's side for just a moment, just so we have
Okay.
equal representation. let's suppose they are actually making these bolded changes to enhance the user experience, to make things better for the user. Are you seeing any evidence that that's the case?
I don't think it's better for the user. I think the user, it's too big of a quote for a search result. If you're highlighting 80% of a search result and saying, look, see how relevant it is, you're not pinpointing the relevancy.
All right, I withdraw my Google support.
All right, one second here. Let me share this. All right, so can you see my slide?
Yes.
So this is what Google is currently returning for the bolded keywords for a keyword like sterling silver amethyst bracelet. Is the price relevant to the keyword or the size? I mean, maybe. I mean, 925 is allowable because that's a synonym for sterling silver. But, look at this. That's not a variant keyword. And there's like maybe 3 in here that are arguably good, but there's like 11 total. So 3 out of 11 being useful is a terrible ratio of look at how relevant it is. My alternative method is producing a list like the old variations, I think. And I think it's pretty close. I'd call this 80% of what it used to be. And so, yeah. So we're looking at alternatives to get these variations because they're critical to the analysis. And the other thing I want to talk about is APIs. There are so many prima donna APIs out there. It's driving me nuts. All right. These API providers, they're great coders, and they think because they're great coders, they know all things. And they don't. It's like 80% of APIs out there are not suitable for Cora. And it is so hard because like people like in the past have said, Ted, just get a different API. It's not that easy. They don't paginate properly. They don't they don't handle character encoding properly. This latest round, I had one that said they would either give me the search results or the HTML for the search results, but not both. But there's a problem with that because they don't understand volatility. So if you give me the results and make me do a second request to get the HTML, that HTML is going to be for different results. So it doesn't work. And so I have this battle where I contact the API providers and I say, you're deficient in this little way. You'll have a better service for all your users if you just do X. And they don't believe me, or they think I'm lying, or they think it'll apply to one person, me. And it's so frustrating. But if you're wondering what the hell is going on with Cora, well, now you know what my week's been like. Still working on it, busting my ass. I'm working weekends and evenings, and I'm all over it. We're going to get through this, and I'm making big progress towards getting through it. If you see weird things in the variations, PM me, let me know. It's tunable, so maybe I can tune it to resolve what you're seeing. Yeah, we're gonna get through this. Google promised big changes, and right out of the gate, requiring headless Chrome and all SEO tools, that was a big damn change. And now, redefining what the bolded keywords in search are for SEO, that's a big damn change. So Google's delivering and they're only getting started. So this year, hang on. If you're a tool provider, you need backup plans. If you rely on APIs, you probably want to rely on 2 or 3 different APIs so you can swap over to whichever one responds the quickest. Having all your eggs in one basket now, that's getting riskier. And not understanding these changes, if you're making solutions going, well, my API provider brought it back, you got to look closer than that, people. You got to look closer than that. All right, that's the end of my rant. What do you think, Lee?
I know that you used to build your own parsers to parse that data. And one of the challenges was that Google would keep tweaking it, and maintaining those parsers were a challenge. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's at the heart of a lot of this.
Yeah. So, as a software provider, I would have to get proxies. I would have to make my customers get proxies, and then I would have to write parsers that could parse the results. And it was typically low volume stuff. So we weren't sending millions of searchers. It was one user in North Dakota wanting to do a search and then to do something with the results. And then Cora does a lot of things with the results, not with the search. So that's kind of the way Cora is built, is a human being manually searches once, and then Cora does a lot of things with what we learned from that search. And so that's what I'm doing. And a lot of a lot of the issue there is maintaining those parsers, because they change often. And they would take a day or so to fix. And, it's just a nightmare. It's constantly doing it. And I'm only one person. And if it happens while I'm sleeping, boom, that's a big problem. And so, discovering the APIs was great, because then I could outsource part of my development. I could take that piece of the engineering and say, hey, there's other people I can pay to do this. And that's the idea, is it's cost effective and ultimately better, provided that it works. But it's one of those situations where I have to have an API provider that'll work with me, that'll identify that, oh yeah, we could be a little better if we did X. And most API providers are not that. And that's really hard. But that's kind of where we're at. Hey, Clint, glad to see you here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite. Come back. It was a cool topic. And I had a couple people hit me up saying they needed to check out the show today. So carry on.
Well, what are your thoughts on the 2 big changes out of Google so far? The rendering and the mass exodus to headless Chrome, and the new variations in Google.
The new variations stand out to me more than the headless Chrome, but I'm not a software developer. And you don't really appreciate all the crap that you guys go through. Like I beat you up all the time. Why aren't you updating Cora? Why aren't you updating Cora? And then you create a tool and you're like, oh, that's why. It's not that he's not updating Cora. It's just that the yardstick keeps getting moved left and right. And how are you supposed to keep up with that? And then they just took the yardstick and made it meters for you. Just for
and so it's on this year. Like this year, I'm under the thumb with Google. They're oppressing tools like mine. But I'm nimble and agile, and I'll get through it. I've taken bigger lumps than this in the past. So, but Google's also only getting started. So,
Yeah.
hang on is my advice.
Clint makes a
Especially
good.
if you're making tools, hang on.
I was just going to say, Clint makes a great point that if you want to appreciate, if you want an appreciation of all these tool folks out there, like Ted, make your own little tool. Go, make a little Python script or make a little HTML and JavaScript page, and just see what it's like to do something simple like extract an XML sitemap and parse it properly, and you'll suddenly get a brand new respect for everybody who goes out there and makes tools, these robust tools for that can do so much too.
Yeah, and I don't view Clint's criticism of me, past, present, or future, as a bad thing. Clint has always been a good advocate for the customer, and that's actually a public service. Being a software company, I've had to learn over the years, what it is, and its most fundamental essence is listening to your customers, taking criticism well, finding a way to agree with them, and then building up the initiative and motivation to make change. And those things are nearly impossible for all human beings. It's so against human nature to take criticism well, agree with criticism, and change because of it. If your spine is crawling with that's software. And so, yeah, that's what it is fundamentally. And, it's rewarding too, because I get to help people and I love that. And the technology is cool. And I love delivering advantage and I love making cool new features. But yeah, it's that doesn't make it easy. Loving it doesn't make it easy. And it requires, very open mind towards things that most people naturally aren't open to, like criticism. Clint, you've had tools and training before. Have you had issues with criticism?
Oh, every day. Every day. I mean, you know how I got started and I made a name for myself. You can't run around and point out flaws in statements or provide what you think is better ways of doing things without being able to hear the other side of that. Because you don't know everything. And as long as you know that, then you're okay. But there is a point where if someone keeps telling you the same thing over and over and over again and you don't do it, that's kind of your fault at that point, right? And you don't have anyone to blame but yourself in that regards too. So
Yep.
I've been on both sides of that madness, and I get humbled just as much as everyone else.
Yeah, and through all your criticisms, I never said you're wrong. And so,
Well, I never was
there's
wrong.
just
Thank God.
extenuating circumstances sometimes. All right. Um, what's going on with SEO this week? And I heard you also had a change with SIA. What should people know about that?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing with SIA is Dory and I are no longer partnered, so I'm not in SIA or Search and Tell as they rebranded it anymore. Partnerships that we were together, what, 7, 8 years now? And this partnerships run its course. Nothing amicable. We don't hate each other. We're still pals. I still talk to her in passing. So um, the relationship's good. We didn't burn any bridges, but it was time to move on from that. And in regards to SEO this week, I brought that back, but I brought it back in its original form. Remember when I was doing news stories and giving my thoughts on the news and ideas for testing and that kind of stuff. So that's back, and the format is news stories, and then I find typically on Reddit SEO questions, and I answer those SEO questions. It's all recorded, no more live streaming. Um, Live streaming wasn't really worth it. One production was kind of a pain in the ass, and you needed extra tools to do the live streaming, and then there's just frankly just not a whole lot of people show up. So and there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with that. most of the viewers anyway always watch the recording. So I was like, well, if most of the viewers are watching the recording, why don't I just record it and put it out that way?
So, what can people expect if they view this week's episode?
This week, what the hell did I talk about this week? Oh, the ever existent is no follow. Worth building links to no follow. Yeah, links from no follow sites. Is that worth it? That question was like one that will never die. And then I went over some opinions that you see in Reddit. There's like different versions of answers that we're all used to, from those are a waste of time to you should do them to you should have them, but you should have them in a certain percentage of your anchor text profiles, and a whole bunch of other myths that come along with that one.
Glenn,
Awesome.
if you'll take recommendations, you should take all your questions, submit them to ChatGPT, and then critique both the question and the ChatGPT answer. Because I'm sure that'll be fun.
Be relevant because I I started a Blue Sky account, which I don't know if you guys are in Blue Sky, but it looks remarkably like X for some reason. That's kind of weird, but I started a Blue Sky account. And John Mueller, if you guys don't follow him, he's not very active on X anymore. He's pretty much moved over to Blue Sky. And on there, he said that, or he was commenting on an article that was written about AI making SEOs illiterate. So I think that would actually be a pretty timely thing to do. They go in there and, here's my answer is I know it. Let's see what ChatGPT says and then see how they compare. That'd be interesting.
Clint, I can tell you on that one that most of ChatGPT's corpus is a very white hat corpus, because one night Honey caught me in bed arguing with the large language model and saying nice things or not nice things about it. Like, are you paid by fucking Google to say this shit? So I was going back and forth. What evidence do you have? And, all those kind of things. So I think Charles is right. If you got the ChatGPT SEO answers, it will give you plenty of fodder for the show, man.
Yeah. I mean, you could probably even go one step further and ask ChatGPT and Google's AI. So you have yours, ChatGPT's, and Google's, and see which one comes out closest to known processes.
Yeah, Charles, right. I argue with ChatGPT a lot. So,
all right. So with that, I want to hand things over to either Lee or Charles, because they each have a mini presentation to update us about something.
I'll go quick because I think Charles has got some in-depth conversation people are going to have questions about. I know his.
Yeah, I think we'll have discussion on mine. So yeah, please take it away.
All right, let me just do this fast here. All right, first, just tested SEO training is coming up in a couple of weeks. One of the questions that I get asked on this one is, why isn't it recorded? Why don't you have videos? In fact, I've seen some people out there in the SEO course space that will sit there and advertise their video courses, say, hey, learn on your schedule. And that's actually kind of brilliant marketing, man. It's a point of differentiation where you could sit there and say, who wouldn't want to learn on their own damn schedule versus this? And my answer to that is simple. One is video courses in general, and this is across industries, and this is across decades now, have a completion rate of less than 5%. And I can tell you that most of the people that I know, myself included, have a hard drive full of video courses that we have yet to start and yet to go through. And even at the agency fast track conference last week, I was talking to an SEO who put out a course for free, dropping nugget after nugget. A few hundred people signed up for it, less than 3% completion rate. And a lot of times less than half the people will even open the first fucking video. So here in tested SEO training, you have to show up. Commitment is the key. And that's what the difference is. And actually the performance, the value that you get out of it is you actually have to do the work. You have to show up. You have to make the time that you won't make if you just buy a video training. So if you're interested, reach out to me on Skype, test it all. We start in a couple of weeks. So love to talk to you about it. Now, 2 weeks ago, I showed you guys how people can lie with maps data. And I know that ruffled a few feathers out there because I've had a few people reach out to me. And then last time we were here, I showed variations, they important, how to use them. And we actually had a number of different people reach out that added those variations to their page and got immediate rankings boosts and all that kind of stuff. Today, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant. And we're going to start with testing, keyword testing. A lot of people want to know how to do this. And a lot of times, if we were doing something like testing a bold tag, we would do something simple, like we'd come up with a fake keyword. We might do 5 pages that include the keyword in a bold tag, 5 pages that didn't, launch those babies, let them get crawled and indexed, and then we look at the results. And then if we get the results might look something like this, and we would see, hey, our 5 pages with the bold tag outranked our 5 control pages, so bold tag gives a boost. The problem with this style of testing is it doesn't tell you how strong that factor is. It doesn't tell you whether it makes major movements or minor movements. So I'm going to talk to you about 2 types of ranking factors. There's elephant ranking factors. Those are the big dogs. Those are the ones that move the needle the most, like keyword and title tag. You do that, and that can move you from like 27 to position 8. It can make big differences in where you're ranking before and after if you make those modifications. And then there's mice factors. Those are the little ones like keyword and bold tag. Those might move you from 27 to 26 or 27 to 27, not at all, because it takes a lot of these to equal the power of some of the bigger factors. Which brings us to Alex Becker. About a decade ago, Becker was big in this particular space. He had a lot of products. He had a lot of courses out there. He would show people the exploits that he was doing in Google, and he would show evidence of what he was doing to rank. And one of the sites that he kept showing over and over was a site that ranked for the term rhinoplasty plano. Now, what happens when you out your site like this is that the SEO community comes after you. There will be a lot of people that sit there and say, hey, I'm a better SEO than Becker. I'm going to launch my own site and I'm going to beat that guy and I'm going to show that I'm the better SEO. And then there's other people that say, hell with Becker. I'm going to sit there and do negative SEO and take his site down. It puts a target on your back. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and Signals Lab decides to run an SEO competition. They were 30 days. You were trying to rank a brand new website, and they put restrictions around the budget so you couldn't just spend on a bazillion backlinks. And the term they chose was rhinoplasty plano, a term that was already littered in the SERPs with SEO sites. So it made it particularly challenging. Kyle Roof steps into this competition and enters. And 30 days later, he comes in second place, which is a shitty story. But the thing about it is the story didn't end there. I mean, his site ranked 20 something. The winning site also ranked 20 something. They didn't crack the top 20. But a few days later, he was number 1 in organic and number 1 in maps. And what caused a big hubbub was that his entire site was ranked using lorem ipsum content. What Kyle had effectively proven to the SEO world was that Google does not read like a human being. Now, there's a lot of these things, different types of gibberish that ranks. Even today, you've got the lorem ipsum, which you see. You've got random alpha, which is just random character strings. You've got alphanumeric, which is letters and numbers put together in fake words. All of these things rank web pages, images, and videos to this day.
Oh, can you go back to that slide for a second? Yeah. See, that and over time, we figured out that there are problems with these approaches. Like they have different hazards. Like the lorem ipsum, Google can actually translate that. And some of the random lorem ipsum generators will be talking about things like baseball in Latin. So you could potentially be going off topic or onto an unknown topic by using lorem ipsum. With random alpha, we saw one experiment where another SEO group had randomly rolled the word sex into a test, and it spoiled their test. And so you have to be careful because random doesn't mean it's not words.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I'll let you go on. But these all have like different hazards.
Well, absolutely. So there's a lot of content theories out there, if we're looking at this. So we talk about, good content or helpful content. What do these things mean? There's other things that pop up. We wonder about AI content. Can Google detect it? If it can, does it care? And there's all of these other particular pieces. Now, a lot of these content theories rely on the fact that Google reads like a human does. And that's problematic when you consider lorem ipsum and random alpha sort of rankings. So I want to know, where's the proof? When you look at this, I don't see, for a lot of these theories, a lot of A/B tests, which are challenging to run for some of these theories, but you can also do correlational studies very, very easily. If you thought, for example, salience was an important thing, you could scrape a SERP, get the top 100 for a bunch of different keywords, do the salience calculation through an API or whatever tool you're using, and do that. But it's not done. And the question is why?
Yeah.
I think the reason why is this. It's easier to think your theory is brilliant without the fucking proof. And I can tell you personally that I've had a lot of brilliant fucking theories go splat when you run an A/B test or a correlational study.
Well, I think what a lot of people do is they say, oh, there's a PhD at Google who managed to do X. That means X is all over search, and that's not true. For example, there is an AI component in the featured snippet result, like it knows how to highlight the answer to a question you ask. And so that is, clearly a step above the normal results, but that doesn't mean that all search results are featured snippets.
Exactly. And the
And
presence of a patent
yeah,
doesn't mean the patent's implemented in the way it's described in the patent. And you even attacked a few of those things, saying there's not enough computing power to have done that thing across the trillions of pages of a search. So the question becomes, and I've asked a lot of SEOs, how does your content theory explain lorem ipsum ranking? And I get a lot of lazy, sloppy thinking in this. Say lorem ipsum sites are a gimmick. Well, they still rank. They'll get you penalized. I'm like, have you ever seen one penalized? They'll point out Kyle's, and I'm like, they did that manually. That wasn't an algorithmic penalty. That was a manual takedown. And he still has a bunch of rhinoplasty plus city sites ranking all over the SERPs. Won't work in my niche? How do you know? And I had a clever SEO say rhinoplasty sites use the stronger ranking zones. And if you think about that for a minute, that's kind of admission that your particular content theory is a weaker factor, if it's a factor at all. So I want people to think about how their content theory, you guys think about how your content theory explains lorem ipsum ranking. And you might find, if you think it through, that your elephant theory is basically just a mouse hiding in an elephant's costume. Tested data consistently beats brilliant theory. So that's it.
yeah.
That's
And when it comes to theories of SEO, I lose interest quickly if you have an 11-dimensional string theory model of SEO, because the rest of us are trying to discover gravity.
Yeah. You want something that works, and that's the thing. And so because I've seen so many of my own theories, and Ted, you and I've had, I don't know, countless conversations over the years where you've had some tinfoil theories that have gone splat hard, as well. And if you look at your ratio of, theories that actually do something to theories that don't do much or nothing at all, I wait
Yeah,
until the data comes out.
for every, discovery where I'm right, there are at least 25 where I'm wrong.
Oh, you suck. I'm stopping listening to you. I'm getting out of Fight Club.
Well, you have to check, right?
Yeah.
You have to check. I wonder, what if X does Y? Well,
Yeah.
no, X sometimes doesn't do Y. Now, I discovered something. I discovered that X doesn't necessarily do Y. I know something the rest of the world doesn't know, even though I didn't get the outcome I was hoping for.
Yeah. Yeah. So I see a lot of this right now where people have just piling, theory upon theory upon theory about how it works. And I'm like, well, but what about lorem ipsum? And they're like, ah. And I'm like, you can't do that. That's not cool. What? You're silent.
If your model of SEO doesn't explain what I see on page 1 of Google search results, your model's wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start there. If I find page 1 for real keywords contradict your model, it's dead on arrival.
Yeah. So
And
that's
I'd like to add that your theory you have to be able to present your theory before you see the results in the data. Like you have to say, so that sounds so basic. I have so many people will explain things after the fact to me. I'm like, well, that's useless. It's like someone says, well, the market went up last week for these reasons. Okay, well, tell me that 2 weeks ago. Don't tell me that after it happens. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking.
I think it's
That's hard, man.
okay to get a theory from an observation, but it does require another predictive round of testing to
Exactly.
verify.
Exactly. You've got to then take that and say, all right, take that and then take it to the next step to test it and explain. And it should, it should flush out to, yep, that's exactly how it works. And I've had things where I've done that and said, yep, that worked the way I expected to work. And I've had plenty of things just like you guys have where I've done it like, nope, doesn't work anywhere near like I thought it worked. I was totally wrong. I was,
No, I agree with that 100%. It's hard when you have to do it in advance and stuff like that, and then tweak it and see, because there are always things that you're going to miss. No one theory explains all of it, because if you just say, hey, there's 200 ranking factors, and when there's more than that, but if you said there's 200 ranking factors, your theory that covers a few of these might explain part of the SERP, but it's not going to explain all of it. But it should give you a consistent result. It should most of the time at least correlate with what we're seeing in the SERPs. There should be something there.
Well, and especially with the top 3, with organic push so low, page 1 is really top 3 anymore. And so if a rhinoplasty plano page for a real keyword, real city is number 2, that needs explanation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I guess we'll hand it over to Charles. Thank you, Lee.
No problem.
So I'd like to do this FU by Charles as follow-up. I realized after I wrote it up that I was like, oh, that could be taken the wrong way. But I want to do a follow-up on the news affiliate site apocalypse that we talked about maybe 2 months ago now. So as a reminder, oops, sorry about that. As a reminder, everybody, Google came out with a warning a little over a year ago, actually a little less than a year ago, saying, hey, we've got this new thing called site reputational abuse. It's not going to go into effect until May. It ended up not really going into effect heavily until near the end of the year, until October, November. But basically they're saying it's when a third party publishes content on their site where the purpose is to manipulate search rankings by taking advantage of the site's ranking signals. And what they're basically saying is that sites have authority. Something that Google has said does not exist for years and years. This basically proves that it does have authority. And one of their points was always like, this is third-party content that's totally unrelated to the subject or the matter of the main site. And it'd be like if Clint had a news site and then I put up a bunch of stuff about, casinos on the site. That would be totally unrelated. So let's see
Can
the
you go back
aftermath.
to that one just a second?
Yeah.
They've actually changed this statement too. It's not written that way anymore. Where it says little or no first party involvement or oversight, they changed it to even when there is editing oversight to the pages.
So Clint and I apparently share a brain, because in a few slides, I'm going to show how Google has gone back. Remember how Google came out with a thing called disavow list, and then they said you should disavow things, and then they spent the last 2 or 3 years saying, why would anyone disavow a link? And it's like, because we remember what you said 5 years ago or 6. So they've gone back and forth in several ways. And I'm gonna kind of point out, I'm gonna name some names this time. I didn't name names last time. I am gonna name names this time. But first, let's see how this is rolled out. So CNN underscored. I didn't mention any of the sites last time I discussed this because I didn't really feel like I should be calling people out, but they've been killed, so I don't see anything wrong with it. CNN has a section called underscored. That's completely out of the rankings now. What happened was you're going to see a pattern in here. In September to August, a lot of these sites started going down. And then in November, Google rolled out, it was a week or two before Thanksgiving, Google rolled out manual penalties and everyone got slammed by manual penalties. So that's what's happening. So this is CNN underscored, Forbes Advisor, which that was a really nice chart over the last several years. And even if you just want to take back and look at just the last year, yeah, they had a pullback. They were still very strong, but they're gone. Fox Business, they had Fox Money. That was doing pretty well. They hadn't been running that long, but that's been absolutely shut down. And then Wall Street had their section called Buy Side. They were one of the sites. I had like 12 examples last time. I'm not going to go through them all because it's the same pattern. But they were one of the sites who in September, early October, they started getting some kind of hit. And then they were obviously hit with a manual penalty. My theory is that Google tried to do this algorithmically, where they put something in their algorithm to catch this kind of stuff, and then they manually check to see who was actually hit and who was not hit, and they decided, okay, we're just going to go after everybody manually. One thing to point out. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just fundamentally hate this. This is Google saying what topics are allowable on your website, and in my mind, that's
if your blood
oppression
pressure
of
is not
freedom
high
of
yet,
speech.
you just wait, Ted. I'm going to get your blood pressure real high on this one. So I did a quick check of all these sites, and none of them have de-indexed their site yet. They've all just gotten a Google penalty. No one's tried to put a no index. No one's put any robots.txt blocks up there. All of these things are still out. They're still floating around out there. And then there's New York Times Wirecutter. New York Times Wirecutter is completely unaffected by this. Not only unaffected, they've actually gone up in the last 2 months. So this is another point.
Of course, they got more rankings. All of their competition was like killed. Two to the head, one to the chest. Yeah. Of course, they're doing better.
Google cleared the SERP space for New York Wirecutter, and just wait, Ted. I got a few more points on your blood pressure in a slide or two. So yeah, Wirecutter is doing absolutely fine. So let's just kind of take a quick step back. What is supposed to be okay and not okay? And Clint made a good point. It's like, well, Google's adjusted this and changed this, and they're speaking out both sides of their mouth. So Google has like what's not considered reputational. So wire services, news publications with content from other news sites. So basically, CNN could syndicate to Yahoo News or something like that, even though a couple years ago, Google specifically said, if you're going to syndicate from one news site to the other news site, you have to no index, because they basically admitted they can't tell the difference and the canonical tag doesn't work. Columns and opinion pieces supposedly don't matter. Third-party content, advertorial or native advertising type pages. So they seem to understand what they mean. I don't know what they mean here, because they've just hit everybody for having third-party content, where the purpose is to share content directly to readers rather than hosting the content and manipulating rankings. That's a real fine line. I'm not sure the difference here. They're saying using affiliate links throughout a page is still okay, or embedding third-party units is okay. And they say coupons sourced directly from merchants. So no coupons.cnn.com. CNN had that. A whole bunch of sites had that. That's not acceptable, because somehow coupons.cnn.com is a lower quality than Retail Me Not or Ebates or any of these other coupon sites.
Google, go to hell on that. If somebody wants to have a coupon site, it's America.
Well, that's seriously the thing. If for Google to say that coupons.cnn.com was low quality, how is that any lower quality than Retail Me Not or any of the other million one coupon sites out there? They're basically admitting that, yeah, our algorithm's being manipulated and they're getting embarrassed by it. But I agree with you, Ted. Like, what was in every single Sunday newspaper up until the last 20 years?
Well,
coupons.
and here's what I would argue. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just not. I'm ignorant of the law. But if you single-handedly get to choose which players live or die in an industry, you are a monopoly.
Especially in an
I'm
industry like
sorry.
news, where it's everyone knows news is dying online. Even, everyone's just they're at the position now where they're saying, we just want to fall slower than all of our competition. No one expects to grow online anymore. So what does Google consider not okay? I highlighted this. It's only a violation of third-party content. It's only a violation if the third-party content is published on a host site, mainly because of the host site's already established ranking signals. How the heck is Google going to know why they publish the content? They're saying that if they're going to figure out how. So if Ted has a high authority site and he pays me to put third content on there, that's not okay if I'm doing it because he has high authority, but it's okay if I sold him on it. Like, the intent now is the crime, not the result. That line just blows my mind. Like, how does Google know?
And how do you determine these things? How do you determine these things? Like, I know most SEOs don't share my beliefs on SEO, but I also know that I do more research and testing than most SEOs.
If Google understands search intent, why can't they understand content intent?
Oops.
Well, they can't read. Rhinoplasty plano, case in point, number 2, after all the updates, the spam updates, the helpful content updates, the panda updates, the this update, the that update, it still works. It still works.
They're suggesting that they can understand, or they want to try to understand, a business relationship between two sites or two businesses or two companies. This isn't even what you're doing on the line. This is the host is mainly because the host site has already established ranking signals. So that just blows my mind. They give a bunch of examples, and I think these are kind of, educational site hosting payday loans, medical site hosting casinos, movie review site doing fortune and essay writing, news site hosting coupons, which, we can get back into that if we want. An established first-party site branches out into new area primarily using freelance content. So
Charles, let me go with this.
Yeah.
Because you're showing me what's not okay. All right, so why? Does Google anywhere in their statements or documentation talk about why this is not okay, why it's bad for the user? Because that's always what they hide behind.
No. Well, I know why I have my theory. My theory is sites doing this it's embarrassed Google over the past couple years. There is a contingent on, like, the LinkedIns and I'm sure on X and Blue Sky and other places that love just pointing out, look what Forbes is doing, look what Fox is doing, look what CNN is doing, look what Fortune's doing. Google, why are you letting that happen? And they've been doing that for a while. So I think Google's come to the point, it's like, okay, it looks like we can be easily manipulated. We have to take action. So it's a PR. It's a PR move in my mind.
Yeah, because I know that, in the affiliate space, if you look at it and say, I'm trying to rank for, wool socks or something like that, you'll have, best wool socks from Wirecutter and Forbes. And, these articles, from these big sites are ranking, all over pages 1 and 2. And it makes it harder for, other sites to compete because we don't have the base authority.
But there is no site authority. John Mueller said that on Twitter long ago.
My bad. I retract the statement.
So to Clint's point, they did come up with an update to the policy in their types of spam. They updated the policy. They updated their site reputational abuse policy. One of the things they talked about in here, and I'll zoom in on this a little bit, is what to do with violating content. They talk about no indexing the content. If you basically, you can take it down or you can no index it. Like I said, I made a point that none of the sites I've looked at so far have no indexed. Now they give some recommended actions. So whenever Google says what not to do, that gives you kind of a clue as what you can get away with. So one of the things they say don't do is don't move the content to another established site or to a subdomain or subdirectory within your site. Moving it could be viewed as an attempt to circumvent spam policy. Moving to an established site may introduce a site reputational abuse on the established site. So that suggests to me that, yeah, you could just move your content. I do know that there was, I think it was CNN, they had AMP pages. Google didn't penalize the AMP pages. So for a brief period of time, all of their third-party stuff, their underscored, and I think it was CNN, maybe somebody else, all their AMP pages were ranking because Google didn't penalize those pages. So this is not something the algorithm can detect, or at least not detect very well. It's clearly manual. I want to call out redoing the content as first-party content. Because Clint, this gets back into the point where I was saying they're just talking out both sides of the mouth. So this is what they said recently, but let me call everybody back to November 19th. They specifically said, we're clarifying the language in the policy, and I highlight there, regardless of whether there's first-party involvement or oversight of the content. So what is it, Google? Do you want us to write it as first party? Or are you telling us, no, even if it's first party involved and written, it's still not good enough. It's still some kind of penalty. And to Ted's point, what's okay? Why are you doing this? There's no reason why they're doing this. They really haven't been very, very clear about it, other than it embarrasses Google. How does it help the users? They really haven't explained that very well. And at this point, it's like, well, what is the rule, Google? There doesn't seem to be a very clear rule, because every time they make a statement, they either revise it or they change it or they contradict what they said earlier. So it leaves me up to, does that mean we have to put on a show for Google? So one of two things. Do we have to have a financial relationship with Google like New York Times does? Or do we just need to put on a show for them? So this is what New York Times does in their Wirecutter section. They have a big long about us where they say, hey, we purchased this company and we're heavily involved and we spend all this time doing reviews. And it's actually, this is like a quarter of the page. The page is huge, where they talk about, what they do and why it matters and how they have subject matter experts. They haven't proven it. They've just said these things. When they, at the bottom of their articles, maybe they are more legit. So at the bottom of their articles, you'll notice they'll often have this little section where they describe the research they went through. And not always, but they often do that. They also often have sources for the articles at the bottom, where they'll call out the things. So they're telling everybody, like, hey, we have this relationship. Yes, it was a separate company. We bought them, and we do all this important work. And here's how we do our research, and here's how we do our sources. So maybe they are legit, or maybe you just got to put on the show. So some of the takeaways.
I don't know. I think if you did everything they did, Google would add a new rule. And you must have pink ladybugs on your web page.
It would be interesting.
Oh, you don't have pink ladybugs. Guess you're dead. They just make up a rule.
It would be interesting to see a Fox or a CNN or a Fortune or Forbes adopt this strategy and see if it works. Move all their redo it as first-party content, like they said in their guidelines. Source it, explain the research, and see what Google says.
What gives Google this authority to say what you can post and how you need to say it?
Mm-hmm.
I can say that we did this on Small Business Trends, that exact layout on Small Business Trends and their affiliate stuff that they were doing. It had no algorithmic effect whatsoever. So it might stave off a manual, maybe, which is probably what happened. I'm assuming you're alluding to that, but it doesn't. And then if you look at the sources, like this is how we wrote the article and it's based off of all of those sources. I mean, it's probably counteracts their about page where they said they buy all that stuff. If you bought all that and tested it, why do you need sources?
Very good point, Clint. So that goes back to are they just putting on a show? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. So some takeaways. This is mostly manual. I think there were some algorithmic attempts by Google to find it. But I think they just said, okay, our algorithm's not going to catch it. We're going to manually look at it. I think one of the things they're looking at, a lot of these sites, they were just taking code, literally taking code and just, they weren't even taking code. They were actually doing like reverse proxies and things like that, where they're pointing at other people's servers. So when you look at the code of itself, it was clearly totally different site, totally different crime. It feels like a thought crime. I mean, Ted's made this point already.
It totally is. Like that
Yeah.
third bullet, make sure you demonstrate curated. Any list creation method is a curated list. It can be lax, it can be strict. There's a whole spectrum on how much curation there is, and technically no curation is an amount of curation. It's totally subjective.
Agreed. Agreed. I make a couple points in it. You have to do more than just declare yourself an expert. So if I have Lee Witcher writing, articles about credit cards, I can't just say Lee Witcher, CFP or whatever on my. I'm going to have to do more, declare them other than just, look at the New York Times, look at all the stuff they're doing. Again, assuming it's not just because they have a financial relationship. And ultimately, like I said, I think this was a pure PR move by Google. They're a publicly traded company. They can't be seen as manipulated, or they don't like folks getting around AdWords so easily. That's a possibility as well. Could be a little from column A.
Can they be seen as the manipulator? Because this looks like market manipulation.
I would agree with that. So that's all. Just have to. Give Ted a chance to take a breath now. Sorry, I didn't mean to get you so worked up.
It's all right. People like seeing Ted fly off the handle.
So, like I said, when I looked at the different sites, everybody seems to just be manually penalized. No one's tried moving things around. No one's tried no indexing. I think there's just knowing what I know about large corporations, there's just like, we don't know what to do. And so the best course of action is do nothing in a large organization if you don't know what to do, because if you do the wrong thing, that could be bad.
Well, let's face it, and let's go back to your your days at a large organization or two or three. You're sitting back there and saying, hey, we've got this, and we're seeing a lot of our competitors do these sort of reviews, and they're ranking well, and they're getting a commission off of those things, and we got a lot of traffic. Here's another monetization method. Let's do that thing. That's pretty much the way I would assume it goes on in the large organization. Then boom, you spin up, whatever it is that you need to spin up, by the thousands, and you start making money, and, everybody's doing it. And then you're kicking the little guy's ass because, you've got way more link authority and everything else than we do. So, I mean, that's pretty much the way it, has progressed throughout your career in various, enterprises.
Yeah. And there's even times where we'll do something knowing. So let's take the coupons. That was the first thing that Google called out like over a year ago. I was speaking with folks in the ad sales team, and I said, look, if anyone's approached you with it, I wouldn't recommend doing it. It looks like Google's going to come down on us. Or here's a way of looking at it. We do it. We make a couple bucks for 5 to 6 months, knowing that it will end in 5 to 6 months. What's the business case? And there's times we've made business decisions like, yes, this is not the best idea, or it's not the best course of action. But when you look at everything as a whole, it's the least of the bad options. And that's, unfortunately, large organizations have to make that decision often. Like, let's just make the least of the bad options because there's just so many parts at play.
And did you ever think of the little guy that you were squashing with your site authority that doesn't exist?
Never. They don't exist. Clinton is affiliate site. They don't even exist in our minds.
I think that goes like to the idea of how does Google know intent? Like algorithmically, they don't, right? So we know that they don't. And my summation is how Google determines intent is CTR in the search results, and that's how they shape what's going to go in there. But in regards to this, like intent of posts, I mean, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So, Forbes and Fox and CNS, they all abuse their authority and put up these affiliate articles for the purpose of tracking traffic. You don't need you don't even need a GAD to see that that's what they were doing. But I'd like to point out the difference in the way Google handled it. Like all of those things that you showed, those were all subdirectories or subdomains of those major sites. If Lee Witcher had a site that was ranking as well as CNN, and he's a small business, they would have roasted that entire domain. They wouldn't have just picked on that one subdirectory. They would have fried that entire site. And it's all about the Benjamins. If Yelp did that, they would roast that entire they would roast that section because they know Yelp was going to sue them. We know this because Yelp has done it, because Google did try to fry Yelp at one point in time, and Yelp was like, all right, I got lawyers too, and they worked that out. But so I kind of goes back to like the December updates that they're always hitting e-commerce and they're pushing major sites up during this magical update that comes out in mid-November and it gets fixed and right after Black Friday. That kind of stuff is just kind of one more chuck in the market where you can say Google's fucking small business, because small business really ain't going to make that big of a dent if they delete all 5 of our sites versus a CNN site.
I agree. So I was still with Fox when the manual hit the one site, and it was the most polite manual penalty I've ever seen. It was, we don't like this, but we're only affecting this. And once you feel like you've fixed it, you let us know, not come down. And I mean, I've been in manual penalties where Google comes and says, we didn't like this link, so we're screwing your whole site.
Yeah.
We didn't like one link to one page, or I've had situations where they didn't like a link to one page. Once I tried to do a review, then they decide we're going to audit your whole site now. It's like, well, wait a minute, you said you didn't like this one thing, and now this is morphed into this whole audit. So
Yeah.
All right, let's get to a few questions here. How many links from a home page to a money page is recommended? I have a nav link, a footer link, exact match, and an image link. Is this hurting or helping? Google will typically state that they use the first link and ignore the rest. But I do think that probably all the anchors get considered for the content of the page. So, I think Google will crawl one of them. One of them will appear in the link graph, but all the anchors may impact the context of the page and the page being linked to. What's your thought, Clint?
Cyrus Shepard, I believe that's his name. He did an actual really cool test on this, and he tested multiple links, an image link, and then another link, and then different variations of that. And the first link in the content was what was picked up for the anchor text, and then the rest of the anchor text ones were ignored. But the break was the image. So if you have one link to a page, an anchor text, it'll follow it. It'll use the anchor text. And if you have an image with alt text, it'll follow that. But if you go link, image, it screws it up and it won't follow all of them. So I mean, if I was doing it, I had it in the nav. I just ignore nav anyway. That's a link. It's kind of expected to be there. I think Google doesn't give it one way more than another. Maybe crawling is kind of my opinion. You get some value, but not a whole lot. The footer link, kind of the same, but we also have tests where you can rank a whole page based off of footers alone. I mean, Ted made a whole, his living off of doing that, and we did the on-page test. And showed that you can do that with footer links alone. But the in-content stuff is where I would be worried. And frankly, you probably don't need all those links. I just do it as a habit nowadays, one anchor text and one image to my primary page that I'm linking to.
I think John Mueller had made some statements about the way that Google processes a page and some of the templated content, which is, the header, the nav, the footer, any sort of widgets that appear site-wide are discounted when determining what the content of the page was. They were trying to identify the unique content on a page. So it kind of makes sense that, a link or something like that coming out of that particular block of the page would, have a different value than the nav or the footer.
Yeah. That's pretty much what our testing shows. Like they looked at those zones and they're like, yeah, we expected a link from this. We're going to give you a little credit for doing it, but not as much as if you have it in your content.
Mhm.
He did do a good follow-up a couple months ago where he started looking at how many is anchor text variation helpful? So if you have a large site, let's say you have a site 10,000 pages, do you use the same anchor text or should you vary it? And it seems to suggest that so you can't hurt yourself with the same anchor text over and over again internally, but there seems to be a benefit, or I should say reduced benefit to using the exact same anchor text. So you should vary it. If you have 10,000 pages, I would use 4, maybe even 5 different anchor text if
Yeah,
you
I
can
can
do it.
verify that. It depends. I call it your domain's power. So like Digital Ear, for example, I can make 5 or 6 pages, supporting pages, and use exact match and get a boost. Page 7 and on, it's just useless. So you got to figure that out for your website. What is your, and it'll grow as your site gets more backlinks and stuff, obviously. But at some point, it doesn't hurt you to have 100% exact match anchors on 100 pages, but it's not helping you either.
Let's see, we have a question. Can we have some ethical hackers on the show to discuss negative SEO and other attacks? Let me look into that. We'd have to be very specific about which hacks and methods, and that we're focused mostly on remedies. Because what we don't want to do is educate the public on how to just make the problem bigger. And so that's really the problem. Kind of the best way to handle negative SEO is to find somebody to help you one-on-one privately. Because the other problem is if you talk about how you're exposed, then everybody knows they can get you that way. And so that could impact all your clients or all your websites. And so even just discussing it too casually could be very hazardous.
I don't know. Making my head
Wait,
black.
you got to change the blue hat. Change the blue hat, dude, before you answer. Change that blue hat.
What I would say is there is value in knowing how things are done so that you can spot that and catch it. So case in point, the canonical issue that Bill Hartzer, he brought it out to the world. Look, you can make a new page, canonical it to yours, and destroy the ranking. So Lee can have a page. I can take an exact copy of that page, put a canonical Lee's page, and then turn my page, my version, into an adult website. I did this for SEO Spring Training. I did it to Saltera and a couple other websites as an example. Great for reputation management, but it's a flaw that probably shouldn't have been there. And because Bill explained exactly how it was being done, and then it's Bill, so people listen to him, that got fixed. Sucks for reputation management people that were using it, but it's good for the internet. So there is value in knowing how to do it. I would agree with your caution, though, that you don't want to be teaching people how to hack websites because there's a distinction between black hat SEO, which could be a lot of negative SEO stuff, and then just straight up hacking. So you don't want to bring a hacker on and here's a PHP script to get into the back door of your website and put links on it. I know it exists because we used to build backlinks that way.
I think there's civil liability in doing harm to a business, and that's the other thing is, we don't want that.
Well, I think that's why you have to, you have to balance your education versus the ethics of your viewers.
Yeah, because the difference is I want people to be able to thwart these attacks. I don't want people to say I have a new tool in my toolbox.
Yeah. Well, if our numbers are right, if 100 viewers watch it, only one of them will actually do it. So we'll be okay.
No, because if it's a new technique, it'll it'll go viral. It'll take on a life of its own.
Yeah, but I also think there's value because there's a lot of times when people say, "Hey, I'm noticing these spammy backlinks showing up in tool X, am I being negative SEO'd and should I do something about it?" So educating people on, what are some of the signs of real problems versus how to do it is always helpful. But even if you sit there and say, "Oh yeah, those Viagra links are definitely the reason," then everybody knows, "Hey man, I'll just send a bunch of Viagra links to Clint's website and take him down because that seems to work." So
And
Here's
there's
it's hard.
others you don't know,
here's the
like a
source of
DDoS, like the DDoS thing that you were talking about, Ted, back in the day, where every Black Friday your sites would just get blasted to push it down. And like today, a lot of people, especially small businesses, are using platforms like Shopify. They'll never know that's really happening to them because can't see the logs. But understanding how that DDoS attack works, you don't have to teach them how to do it, but understanding how it works, and then here's the signs that you'll see in the search results would be helpful to a Shopify user versus here's your log file and you need to look at that. Well, you can't see that in Shopify, so.
Yeah, but here's the real triage list on where the negative SEO is coming from. The number one culprit is you. You've done something stupid to yourself. So I'd say 70% of the time that's the source of the negative SEO. The next culprit is a disgruntled employee or consultant. So you piss someone off on the inside and they left you a parting gift. And then after that, we start to get into things like sweep ups. You were swept up in some spam negative SEO mass system. They didn't target you specifically, but you're one of many victims from this mass system. It gets down to like, sub 5% probability that you have someone specifically targeting you. You have to be a worthy target to get that type of treatment. So it usually is, highly competitive terms, a lot of money on the line, shipping cutoff dates related, things like that tend to get that treatment where it's seasonal. If you don't get it out in the spring, you're not going to sell swimming pools in the fall. So that's your chance. It'll tend to be things like that. But yeah, the big mistake is assuming that negative SEO doesn't exist, but oftentimes it's self-inflicted or someone you know. Let's see. For local SEO with multiple GMBs, should I build separate pages for each location and use that URL in the Google Business profile, or just use the homepage URL and all? This is a rather uncommon thing. Most local SEOs don't realize that. You have to work with franchises quite a bit to realize that those franchises could all share the same homepage in multiple different profiles. And then it becomes a challenge in your SEO tools to figure out which location was ranking for which keyword because they all use the same URL. And you can do that in Quora. You use the maps report and it'll tell you the street address of which location was ranking for that keyword. But yeah, that is a problem, and I'm not sure I know the best practice on that. I've seen it both ways, and I don't have the data on who does better. So I've hit a limit of what I know to help you. How about you guys? Have you
Well,
worked with that?
Clint works with a lot of he's worked with a lot of franchises, so I don't know if he's done it in terms of tested data within that, but I know he's seen it both ways probably.
Yeah, well, the first way that Ted described putting the homepage in everybody's map is really a franchise thing. They're just kind of hijacking the marketing that their franchisors are doing to boost the overall brand, which helps them out because they increase royalty checks. The other way where you do it, and is I'm not a maps expert, but I stayed in a Holiday Inn Express once, and I talked to JP and I talked to Mike Merlino, and they both say if you have multiple locations, you put the URL to the landing page for that location in there to build that up. You're leveraging the on page for that specific location and tying it into the map, which ergo is supposed to work together. So we always did it where each location had its own page, and that page was on that location's map.
There you go.
All right. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think it's correct. I mean, that kind of fits with our uh, working local as well, specific.
We have a question here. Has anyone hired Brian Cato to help with nefarious competitors? I've known multiple people who have gone to Brian Cato for help securing servers and help after being hacked. I know he's aware of a lot of negative SEO things. And he is on my short list of if I had a problem I didn't know how to handle, I would probably talk to Brian Cato and JP. Because if they didn't know, they probably know who would know.
Right.
And so you just got to work your networks and see if you can find somebody that's seen it before. What do you think, Clint?
I don't know that Brian actually does. I know he'll consult with you and help you figure out, especially in the computer tech side, like the PHP script that I mentioned, is that on your website? And is that hole there so they can fix it? He does that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty sure Brian's not out. He's not a gun for hire in the negative SEO space anyway. So
No, he would be on the let's secure the system side of things.
Yeah, but
But he
he
does
would have
know
a
a thing or two.
Rolodex. Yeah, he has a Rolodex. He knows some players.
Let's see. Let's see. Does Clint have a mastermind group or training anymore?
whatranks.com is getting updated. That's where I'll be keeping everything. And then I have a Discord. JP, he abandoned it. He quit the internet again, and then he gave me his Discord group. So I'm bringing that back to life too. When JP left, everyone died.
Let's see. When you're testing, do you also purchase a domain that's using a string of random letters and numbers to attach test pages to? Yes, I often buy 10 of them at a time just for that reason. And one time, one of them happened to be a telco from China. So even when I did random keys on a keyboard, I spoiled the test. So make sure you check Wayback Machine. Make sure they weren't once upon a time somebody else's website. Let's see. How can we base our on-page, off-page? How can we base our on-page off of page one results when there are other factors that are keeping those on page one?
Hmm.
Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to find a way to figure out how you're different from your higher ranking competitors. You need measurement data that itemizes all the possible ways you're different than those as best that we can tell. And then you need to get a lot of those for a lot of different keywords and websites. And when you start to get thousands of those or more, you can start to see these really widespread patterns of what's a common deficit, what appears to influence rankings. And now correlation isn't causation, is what typically people throw at you. But causal things tend to correlate. And we're talking about a sort order. What's contributing to a sort order of something? So if I went to Amazon and went to a category and I said, I'm going to fool everyone, I'm going to change the sort order of this category and see if anyone can figure it out, and I start telling you the prices, oh, it's $999 is the first result. $700 is the second result. $500 is the third result. $499 is the fourth result. Do you have an educated guess on what the algorithm is? And why didn't it take 1 million samples to figure out that it was price descending? So people seem to think that you need millions and millions of samples to figure out what's contributing to a sort order. And the fact of the matter is that's just not true. Lee, thoughts?
Yeah, I think you handle this in the question. If you're looking at something like using Quora, you're not just looking at the top results, you're looking at a correlation of the entire SERP, the top 100, to give you some clues on that. So I don't just base what I'm doing on page one, because one of the things I've said is, all SEO tools like Quora and others take measurements, but if you just follow the recommendation straight up, you're copying your competitors' good SEO and you're copying their bad SEO as well. So you have to have a little bit of discernment in how you read those things. So, that's where the top 100 helps with that a little bit more than just looking at, a handful of competitors at the top.
Any more opinions on that one?
I'm kind of on page SEO is the basics. So if you're better at the basics, then you can rank higher. So that's you're not. The question was posed as if you were making all of your SEO judgment based off of just on page, when in fact that's where you start. If you started like I just wrote this piece of content and I didn't care about the order of my headings, or I had irrelevant terms in my headings, you set yourself up for failure and you've missed the on-page basics. If you started with just backlinks, well, what if you didn't need backlinks? What if you can do an analysis like Ted said of, I don't know, roofing city, do that 100 times and make a template, and 99% of your pages rank with just the on page. Well, you did all this analysis and you didn't need it because Google, the competition was low enough and those people didn't have the basics set. So that's why you're winning. So there's definitely more to it, but I wouldn't go and just say, listen to Lee or Ted or even myself, and I use Core and I analyze the on-page factors and just assume that that's all we did. Right? There is off-page stuff and on-page technical SEO that comes into play too, that are all part of the basics.
And as Lee likes to say, it's very often the case that all the players on page one make the same mistakes. So copying moves isn't always, the best strategy because of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Can you do a show on negative SEO attack vectors and how to counter them? Well, what I'm
You already
thinking,
answered that one.
what I'm thinking on that is that I could do the how to counter them without going into details on how to do the negative stuff. And so I think that might be worth doing.
You could talk about the symptoms that they'd see, Ted. So, for
Yeah.
example, like those, was it the /1000 pages that people are seeing? You don't have to explain how that's happening, but you can say,
Yeah.
hey, if you see this, here's how you counter it.
Or the -1.htmls
Yeah.
or the sudden 500 errors in Google Search Console, which could be a number of things. Yeah, I think there are fewer remedies than there are attack vectors, and so focusing on the remedies would probably be really good. Let's see. This smacks of EEAT. Eat. Charles is right. Total PR stunt. You have to prove you're legitimate. Yeah, is this something a real business would do? That's a Kyle Roof quote, I believe. He might have been quoting somebody else, though. But truth is, Google has no idea if you're legit or not. Well, legit camouflage, legitoflage, it's probably a good thing.
Well, there was a great
Um,
quote that I used to use that said, the key to success is sincerity. If you can fake that, you've got it licked. It's like that's kind of the thing about, a lot of the lead gen is you want to fake sincerity. You want to fake it like, get all the signals you need so that Google thinks you're a real business so you can operate without being harassed algorithmically.
every startup on earth had to fake it till they make it. Microsoft and Apple, there was a time they were working out of a garage pretending they were a bigger business than that.
Yeah.
So that happened. Um, let's see. Um, let's see. Very excited to have Clint back. So people like having you here, Clint. If that matters,
No
I hope.
accounting for taste.
Yeah, I hope you show up more regularly because yeah, you've been missed. Let's see. A client in the cannabis seeds industry got Google Discover manual penalty first and got dangerous content across the website penalty. Any way out of this or any contacts? Um, I'm not sure on this one. I had people proposing that I get into this business last year, and I didn't. I just thought it was contrary to how I'm raising my kids. I couldn't do one thing and say another, and so I turned it down. Um,
Is it a manual penalty or do they
pro-
think they got
He said
penalized?
manual.
He
did say
said manual, and
Okay.
I would guess it's manual because they probably don't want to false flag on things like oils and hemp products and stuff like that that aren't medicinal.
They
But
might be able to just apply the adult content meta tag. Google did a video on that about a year ago. And you can it's mainly for safe search. So I don't know if that'll solve the problem, but that's what I would try.
I would also consider the laws like in the US. A lot of states have legalized marijuana, but federally it's not. So Google is very touchy on that. And then in Washington State, for example, you can have a cannabis store. You can even have a website for your cannabis store, but you can't sell the products on your cannabis store. And that could be a factoring into a lot of Google's decisions too. Is okay, we're cool with you having a cannabis GMB. We're cool with you having this, but you can't actively promote the individual products. And even I would guess to hazard that if you were in Google Discovery, that means you're doing informational articles, and those informational articles were directly promoting your products. And so Google said, nope, you're not doing it. Versus the 10 best, the Fox News article, 10 best reasons to use CBD for seizures.
Let's see. I got 2 pages on top 5 results and are cannibalizing each other, but both drive revenue. Keep them both, redirect one to the other, just rank one but higher. Any thoughts? Well, my thought is if you can have your cake and eat it too, you probably should. So either leave it alone, but or if you wanted to try something risky, go for the gold. Take the one that performs lesser and put it on a different domain. See if you can have two results side by side in the top 5. Because that would be the ultimate win, right? But you have to run multiple sites to start taking more of page one. So that's my thought is either, maybe find a different keyword. Let's come back to that one if all the other keywords are done. But if it's load bearing, leave it alone. If you want to go for the gold, side by side rankings is it. What do you think, Clint?
I mean, it's tough because they're both generating revenue. So if Google is showing them and they're both generating revenue, why in the hell would you touch it? So I would leave them both there and then do what you said. Go make another.
Well,
domain. Obviously it's easy to rank for the term because Google is showing 2 results from the same site on it. So
yeah, but I
go
think
do what you said and go take another domain and make a third page.
because I think what he's saying is only one appears at a time, and it's flip-flopping between the two.
I'm not sure about that because sometimes people will sit there and have 2 different, I rank number 2 and number 4 or something like that, and they'll think that it's cannibalizing. But if it's flip-flopping back between the two, are they in the same position? Are you both of them showing up in position 3, or is one showing up in position 2 and one showing up in position 5? If it's a 2-5 setup, I would 301 5 to 2 and let that one drive a higher revenue because it's in a higher position. But if they're both in the same spot, then yeah, I agree. I would, look at another domain and see if I could capture, 2 spots rather than one.
Yeah, this is a nuance of the way he asked the question, right? So
Yeah.
I have 2 pages in the top 5 results. To me, that says I have 2 pages in the top 5 results versus I have 2 pages competing or flip-flopping in the top 5. Could
And
be.
if you're ranking 2 and 4, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, when they rank, they're in the top 5, but they're cannibalizing each other, so one is replacing the other. And so that means time sharing. So if we
Yeah,
ran a volatility report, I'd expect to see red on this.
Yeah, he clarified and he said that that's actually the case. They are moving, flip-flopping.
So yeah. So, I think leave it alone, redirect one to the other, or try to get both on ranking side by side with a different domain.
You can probably also, and that third option would be to link your least performing one to your most performing one with exact match, and then de-optimize the second page for the term you're trying to rank it for. So you basically just added too much keyword density to that second page for the target term. So go look at Search Console and find a different target term for it.
Yeah, that's an option too. Let's see. I'm seeing all kinds of links like these, where to buy rocket age domains and backlinks. Are they harmful? Where the rocket is an emoji. So that's an exploit. Whenever you get emojis into the search results, often they're a visual call out and can help win the CTR. That's why people are doing it. Google normally filters emoji results from the results. So normally it's a one-way ticket out of the search results. But if Google has forgotten that wisdom and what's old is new again, then the emojis I recommend are the security lock or the green or blue trust shields. The green check mark is a really good one. Because those emojis imply that there's some degree of trust or security above everyone else, even though it's just something you're throwing in there. But do know that Google has cracked down on this numerous times. It's come back numerous times, so I would expect it to get cracked down on again eventually. Any thoughts on emoji results?
Nah, like you said, it's a tactic that comes in and out of favor and effectiveness. So
Yeah, in the past, it wasn't as easy as just pasting it into the code. Sometimes it's that easy. Sometimes you have to like double encode it as an HTML entity to get it to bypass a filter and then appear. So if you are going to experiment with it, find working examples and emulate what they did.
I read the
Can,
question the other way is saying that he's like, for example, in his Ahrefs account, and he's got a whole bunch of links with those anchor texts. And if he's selling backlinks, no, that probably actually help you. But if you're an engine, you have a, a site about how to build an engine and you have those anchor texts, then that's bad for you. So context of the question.
oh, yeah. Good point. Answer the question they ask, not the question I heard. Can adding in PPC negatively impact organic traffic? Well,
yeah, because your ads can steal your clicks from your organic. Yes.
Or you can, I don't know if it's still true today, but I ran PPC for exact match terms that I was ranking in the top 5 for. And when I shut off the ads, all my rankings went away.
yeah, I think there is a historic precedent for just about every scenario. I think Google has played around with it. And so, yeah, I'd just say be careful. Change can bring unexpected outcomes. And so, Google is a big ecosystem. I would imagine, though, that, having some amount of ad spend is some kind of a trustworthy customer signal to Google. But at the same time, if you lose your rankings, it's probably not the best thing to respond by throwing money at Google.
Yeah.
So I always hate it when people get destroyed and they rush to pay-per-click and throw money at Google, because really, what are you incentivizing Google to do at that point?
I
To
also
not
wonder
destroy you?
if it's like we have this data, let's apply it now kind of thing. So if Terry runs ads to his landing page and his landing page never converts, or Google doesn't see any of that conversion numbers, and then ergo that landing page is not as valuable, and somehow that score gets passed to the organic systems. I mean, that would be interesting. I don't know that you could ever test it or prove it, but it's a good theory, I would guess.
Yeah. All right, let's see a few more of these and we'll call it. Let's see. I think that might be close. Let's see. What is the best way to find new SEO clients in 2025? Um, you can find a lot in search. You can find infinite crawl problems with clever search queries. You could run a Cora report and find misconfigured business profiles that are easy to solve. And these things are great because you can screenshot people's businesses to themselves saying, here's your problem here. give this to your SEO. And if you don't have an SEO, we'd be happy to help you out and do an audit and see if there's any other problems going on. And those methodologies where you're using Google to find people with problems you can solve, those oftentimes will give you an infinite lead list. So, someone should really make a tool that encapsulates all those methodologies. What do you think, Clint?
I think you're looking at it. So shows like this, you put yourself out there, put your knowledge out there, and then you gain it's probably the easiest sell, especially if they watch you a lot. They already know you, they already trust you, and they're going to bring their business to you, and all you got to do is send them the invoice. So doing like, you don't even have to do shows, do like I do, you record it, or you can do shorts on YouTube and Instagram Reels and TikTok now that it's back for now. And that's or podcasts even. Get yourself out there. You know more than you knew the day you started, so you have information to share. And as you see my example with the no follow question, it's never going to go away because there's always new people coming, so you can always answer all the old questions. So.
And there's other ways. There are old school offline methods, like, there are BNI groups in your particular area where you share and you get referrals from that sort of network in your home area. You can speak at chamber of commerce sort of things. You can set up meetups, and there's a lot of ways to do things just locally to get known in your backyard for local businesses there, because local businesses like dealing with somebody that they can drive to their office or meet them, at a location, more so than an SEO that lives, across the country. So it doesn't just have to be online. You just get a little creative.
I would just
JP?
suggest if you're going to put yourself out there, just make sure you're talking about their problems and not yourself. And I'm guilty of it. I'll say, oh, I'm Charles, and these are all the great things I can do. No, you say, hey, do you have page bloat? Do you have this problem? Do you have that problem? Or are you sick of ranking number 5? Do you talk about their problems, not how great you are? Quick funny story. I wrote an article years ago about how Google recognizes different phone numbers and what phone number formats Google doesn't seem to recognize. I actually got a call while I was at Verizon from another person in the business, in a unrelated part of my business, who just found my article. And then they were excited that not only did this person have the solution, but they actually worked at the same company. So, write articles or posts about problems that people have and how to solve them. And even though my article said, here's the solution, they still wanted to talk to me. And I've had that many a times. So.
And JP said, challenge accepted. He'll work on making a tool that finds you leads with problems that are easy to solve. So that'll be awesome. We'll have him come on and review it if that gets into beta. Let's see. And yeah, we'll just kind of end it there. Looks like we got through the list this time. All right. Thank you, everyone. Just remember to visit SEOfightclub.org, our new forum. It's totally free. We need your help to build the community. And it's another great place to continue the conversation. So if you have more questions tomorrow, you don't have to wait till next week. You can, but hopefully we'll see you in the forum, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.